BTS and Chris Brown. This is disgusting. I genuinely need someone to explain this to me. Because why, in the year 2026, are RM and J-Hope from BTS publicly hanging out with Chris Brown? Yes, that Chris Brown. RM and J-Hope attended Chris Brown and Usher's concert in Toronto. They were seen enjoying the show, and afterwards they posed backstage with Chris Brown. They even shared themselves dancing along while he was performing Look at Me Now, and I'm sorry, but I find this disgusting. Not because BTS aren't allowed to listen to whatever music they want. If they want to listen to Chris Brown privately, that's their decision. But there is a massive difference between privately enjoying somebody's music and publicly showing support for that person when you have one of the biggest platforms on the planet. And can we please stop pretending that Chris Brown's history is some obscure piece of celebrity gossip that nobody could possibly know about? This man pleaded guilty in 2009 to assaulting Rihanna. That is not a rumor, and it is not something invented by people on Twitter. He pleaded guilty. Rihanna was left injured, and the case became one of the most infamous domestic violence cases in modern celebrity culture. And what makes this even worse is that we are not only talking about something that happened 17 years ago. Chris Brown pleaded guilty to a fray in July 2026 over a violent confrontation at a London nightclub, and his sentencing is still ahead. So when people say, "Why are you bringing up something from 17 years ago?" Apparently we do not even need to go back 17 years. We can talk about something from literally weeks ago. And yet somehow RM and J-Hope thought that this was the perfect moment to attend his concert, dance to his music, and pose with him backstage. Why? Seriously, why? And I already know what some armies are going to say. Maybe they didn't know. I'm sorry, but that excuse only goes so far. RM and J-Hope are not random teenagers who accidentally walked into the wrong concert. These are internationally famous adult men who have worked inside the American music industry for years. And even if I give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they somehow did not know every single detail of Chris Brown's history, the result is still the same. They publicly showed support for him, and that is what people are criticizing. What makes this even uglier is watching some fans bend themselves into human pretzels trying to defend Chris Brown simply because their favorite idols took a picture with him. You do not have to defend every single person BTS interacts with. You can love BTS and still say, "This was a terrible decision." Those two things can exist at the same time. In fact, if you genuinely respect an artist, you should be capable of criticizing them when they do something you believe is wrong. Imagine changing your entire opinion about domestic violence just because Namjoon stood next to somebody in a photograph. That is not loyalty, that is parasocial insanity. And please do not start with, "But Chris Brown is talented." I do not care. Nobody is arguing that the man cannot sing or dance. Talent does not erase violence. Being influential does not erase violence. Having hit songs does not erase violence. Getting invited backstage by somebody you grew up listening to does not erase their history either. What really bothers me is what this represents. Chris Brown continues to have an enormous career because the entertainment industry has basically decided that if someone is talented and profitable enough, eventually everybody will move on. Another tour, another collaboration, another celebrity picture, another famous artist talking about how much he inspired them, and slowly the violence becomes this tiny, uncomfortable footnote underneath the career. And now 2 members of the biggest K-pop group in the world are participating in that normalization. That is what I do not like. Nobody forced RM and J-Hope to take that picture. Nobody needed that photo. Nobody needed to see them publicly celebrating Chris Brown. They could have enjoyed the concert and gone home. But instead, their enormous fan base is now discussing him, defending him and circulating his name again. And before somebody says I'm blaming BTS for Chris Brown's actions, obviously I am not. Chris Brown is responsible for Chris Brown. RM and J-Hope are responsible for their decision to publicly associate themselves with him. That is the distinction. And I'm disappointed, especially because BTS are no longer rookies who can hide behind their company making every decision for them. These are grown men with enormous individual influence. At some point, your choices are yours, and I think fans should be allowed to say that this choice was gross. You do not have to burn your BTS albums. You do not have to suddenly hate Namjoon or J-Hope. But please stop treating grown celebrities like toddlers who have absolutely no idea what they are doing. I would rather see accountability than blind worship, and posing happily next to Chris Brown in 2026 is absolutely something I think they deserve to be criticized for.